behavior, everybody. We're going live.
Okay.
Not yet, but soon.
Great. So Tom, I'll call the meeting to order.
We're not live yet. Hold on.
Oh, we're not. All right.
As we are.
Now we are. Go ahead.
I feel very live. I'll call the meeting to order again. The March 24th version of the Scarborough Housing Alliance. And we're getting started at 6:03. Does everybody have the agenda handy?
No.
Yep.
Tom had either Tom or Tony had emailed it out along with some the meeting minutes. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, and hopefully everybody got a chance to take a look at them. And if folks have, I would love to entertain a motion to approve them.
You want a roll call, Brian?
Nope, I'm happy to, but is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I think roll call of attendance, I think is she.
Oh, of attendance.
suggested.
Aha, sure. Yes, so we've got Marge DeSanctis, Dick LaRue, Will Rowan, Eric Boucher, and Michaela Sargent. And our council liaison, her name is here at least, Betsy. There you go.
Sorry, I'm coming off a meeting, so I'm eating and drinking, so no sans
All right.
camera, so no one has to look at it.
Great. Well, thanks for being here, Betsy.
You guys.
Yeah,
I
great.
don't want to make a motion or approve minutes because I wasn't here.
All right.
I'll move that we approve them.
Great. Thanks, Will. Is there a second?
Yeah.
All right. Second by Dick. Any discussion? All right. All in favor? All right. Any opposed?
I'm just
Marge,
abstaining.
Marge is voting present. So the minutes pass.
I can't vote on the minutes because I wasn't there. So,
You actually can vote on the minutes.
well, I did read them and they're lovely. So I'm voting in favor.
You're voting. All right. Motion to reconsider. Great. Bill, welcome back.
Hi.
Bill.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Bill.
How are you?
Bill?
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too, Bill.
Thank you.
So folks might recognize now we've got a bit of a different look to the agenda, and you know, this will entail going out of order on the agenda because the first item on the newly introduced topic section is the new format review of the agenda. So if folks don't mind, I'll go out of order and just talk about this and share the intention behind it. But the new format has what I refer to as a standing agenda, which will be the part of the meeting that will be fairly consistent. And that's got 4 elements to it besides the approval of the minutes. The first is an update on the housing fund balance. Housing fund balance being the fund that we use to to fund our affordable housing trust fund. I think from time to time or meeting to meeting, it'll be good to know the level of requests that we've approved, level of requests that we've got pending, and level of draws that have been made on the fund. The next item will just be a quick update on the affordable housing pipeline. This agenda says has a C attached note. We never ended up attaching anything, but a few meetings ago we were talking about inventory of affordable housing in Scarborough, and we had kind of a 1 or 2 pager that outlined total number of units, both in town existing, in town under construction, and in town proposed but not yet under construction. And the intention with this is just to continually be taking a look at that snapshot to see what exactly we do have for inventory in town. There's over the next several years there will be a lot changing. It may not change on a month-to-month basis, but I think bringing all of this onto the surface will be good to get it onto our radar screen just to see what's going on with changes in our affordable housing inventory.
And Brian, if I might interject there, we had, was it 10% of housing was supposed to be affordable, or there was some amount, and we met it this past year because we had so many projects come to fruition. But the other reason to do this inventory on an ongoing basis is so that we can continue to look at, are we meeting the guideline of our percentage?
That's right, Marge. And Tom, is it right that it's 10% of new units created each year? The goal is for them to be affordable?
There's a 5-year look back. So over the last 5 years, that it's an aspirational goal in the comprehensive plan
Mhm.
that 10% be affordable.
Right.
The only place it appears in the ordinance where it's mandatory is Scarborough Downs.
Right.
Right, but it was something that we were supposed to be trying to achieve.
Yeah. So this will be a place for us to track it on. The next piece of the standing
Well,
agenda.
Betsy had a question, I think.
Oh, you have a
Tanner,
question,
yeah,
Betsy?
question. And so, and I know you've said this before, but if you wouldn't mind saying it again, what's the definition of affordable housing you're using here?
Oh, yeah, Betsy, it would be affordable, in alignment with what's in the ordinance.
Okay, and
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to continue to just describe the agenda for now.
yep,
So the next element of the agenda is, an outreach report, and as we talk about aspiration, this.
He's frozen.
I think we
He
lost
is
him.
frozen.
Very chilly.
Um,
Brian, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you.
Well, our next project will be getting better broadband.
Hmm.
That's right. That's a
is
different
Brian
committee.
at home or in the office?
I believe he's at home. I'm not sure.
So he kicked off, now he's coming back.
Hey. We're back after this commercial. Sorry about that, guys. So the next element of the agenda is the outreach report, which is a little bit aspirational and a little bit new, and it reflects what I hope will be an effort by this group and a new practice that we can start to get into of outreach to different stakeholders that we interact with, and the notion of work of the Alliance outside of Alliance meetings. So here would be an opportunity for breakout groups to be reporting on outreach that's taken place to business partners, to stakeholders who are served by the housing that we fund, the lending partners, to development partners, any type of work that's being done between meetings. Just a quick status update on any type of outreach that we may have called for in one meeting that's getting done in between meetings. Not necessarily a spot on the agenda for actual business to take place, but just reporting out what's going on outside of our meetings. And then the final element of the standing agenda is what I call the discard bin review. And not surprisingly, sometimes these agendas get packed with lots of great aspirational ideas. Not all of them get addressed. And sometimes some of those things that don't get addressed fall off and never make it to a new agenda. What I'm hoping is that each new agenda that we create is full of things that we want to be talking about at the next upcoming meeting. And the discard bin review is an opportunity for people to kind of go crawling through old agendas from the past and find old things that they want to talk about. the past practice had been to kind of continue carrying forward old business on the agendas. And one of the, this may be kind of a personal reaction. It always gave me a lot of anxiety to feel like we had a lot of things to talk about in a given meeting to catch up on. So this is my way of keeping the agenda to one page, and kind of consolidating it, and giving folks an opportunity to go through their old agendas and see if there is something they want to affirmatively bring up and get on for the next meeting. And then there'll be this newly introduced topics section, which most normal people at normal meetings would call new business. But we've got a different name here called newly introduced topics. And tonight we've got 5 newly introduced topics, and we'll see how they all go and how many we get through. So this is an idea for an agenda format. And I'd love to hear some thoughts on its practicality and ideas for tweaking for the future, or folks are comfortable rolling with something like this and testing it out going forward.
I like the format. I have no issues with it, except for on the outreach report. Is that actually going to be a newly introduced item so we can talk about what that outreach would actually look like?
Yeah. For now, I think it's kind of a catch-all, or not a catch-all, but a placeholder, if you will, Marge.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that would be maybe not for tonight, but at a upcoming meeting, that would be very worthwhile to talk about what goes into that spot and how we want to work to actually do outreach. If there's a few of us that have ideas about outreach to lenders or realtors or developers, or whoever, I think that's a great discussion to be having.
So Brian, I like the new components, and I like what you did here. I think my only I guess question is around having newly introduced topics so much later in the agenda. While I'm sure we can, if we had a guest, typically that would be falling there, and presumably we can always change the agenda to do things earlier if need be. But I'm just concerned that there's a lot to get through before we get to kind of the new stuff on the agenda, and often that's I feel like the meat of the meeting, or the most important stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point, Will. And particularly, I could see the first 2 items in the standing agenda going pretty quickly. I think the outreach report has a lot of opportunity to kind of grow some conversation, if you will. And either based on what's in there or how we all treat it. And maybe the discard bin review could be something quick, but yeah, you have some thoughts about how to.
Well, I guess my thought there is the discard bin review might be something that we get to if there's time remaining. In which case I would think it might fit better at the end after we've gone through some stuff. Similarly, the follow-up on previously introduced, unless there's something specific to follow up on that might warrant its own bullet point on the agenda.
Yeah, I've seen in some meetings there's one of the early items in an agenda is kind of polling the group to see if there are any amendments to the agenda that folks want to propose. That discard bin review kind of it serves the same function, although it looks a little bit clunkier.
Yeah, got it. So if we brought something up, it might be to put it at the end of the agenda if time permitting.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And then your note about a guest speaker or your kind of a hot topic that we want to make sure we get to, I think it would be easy to reorder things, as time permits.
Case in point, we do have guests available and present.
And present.
Not to speak too long, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hall. Any other pressing thoughts? Great. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate the willingness to innovate, and excited about the year ahead. So with that, why don't we shake things up a little bit? Tom, who's our guest?
Well, I'm going to permit Nate House to come in. Nate is a development officer with Vesta Housing. There's Nate.
Hey, Nate.
I know the owner developer of the property, Jack Stoley, is also here. I'm not sure whether he has contributions to the conversation. This is a request directly from Avesta.
Right. I don't think that, I think Jack will be fine just observing.
Okay.
Great. Nate, thanks for joining tonight.
Yeah.
And I guess we're not going out of order on this agenda. This is great. So this is part of you'll be presenting on your response to our RFP.
Right.
Perfect.
Right. So you have the RFP materials. Hopefully you've had a chance to peruse. But in case you hadn't, I thought I'd just kind of do an opening statement about our responses, if that's helpful. Good.
Yeah, that'd be terrific. Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. At the last meeting of the Housing Alliance on February 24th, we presented a summary of our planned development on the former police and fire stations along US Route 1. In response to that request, the Housing Alliance presented Avesta with several questions and follow-up items. You asked for similar items to those requested by the Finance Committee. So as an addendum to the response to the RFP, I included those responses. So in response to the question of market demand in Greater Scarborough, we provided components from 3 different market analyses. We should note that all data is for the Greater Portland market, also known as the Portland HMFA, which stands for HUD Metro Fair Market Area. And this is how HUD designates geographic areas based on a market and need. Scarborough alone as a town is simply too small for demand to be adequately captured by the various data sets. You guys are welcome, and I've tried to play around with the US Census data to get a clear picture from that data set, and it's very difficult, especially in a lot of main towns. Pretty much outside Portland or Scarborough, I have trouble. So having established the market in question, the Greater Portland HMFA, with a focus on Scarborough, we included the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, housing statistics for the market area. HUD separates households by income level and differentiates between housing conditions between those households with what HUD considers to be with conditions and those without conditions. With conditions is a catch-all term. It essentially means substandard housing that cannot adequately house a household of the appropriate size, or households that are rent burdened. So the HUD data indicates that there are approximately 7,000 of these households in the Greater Portland market. We further included main housing's analysis of the Greater Portland market, which paints a similar picture, although this data shows all households and not just 55 plus. Finally, we also took a more close-up picture of the market by comparing this project to the market study for our current development in Gorham. You'll note that the section of the report I included shows that the capture rate for this project, so the capture rate is the needed percentage of the population required to fill up the project. The project in Gorham required a 0.6 capture rate because there were like 3,000 households. We would expect a similar demand structure here. I will note that HUD's data, it's difficult to see the back end of HUD's data, but this is the data that HUD uses for resource allocation. It is a valid data set. The data set actually was published. HUD has released what's called the 202 Notice of Financing Availability, which is the creation of new senior housing. And within that NOFA, you actually have to score yourself based on market need. And they give you the link to this data set to use. So this is a data set that is used by HUD annually via all their programs to determine the market need. And as for the main housing data, if there are questions about its reliability, in particular how it relates to Scarborough, I can't actually speak to that. I can only say that this is what is on main housing's website. and it presents a similar picture to the other 3 analyses that I have provided. But I would encourage you to reach out to the research and development division at Maine Housing, because they can give you the pointers on how to best interpret the data. So moving on from the market analysis, our parking and waitlist data points were also included in the follow-up packet for your consideration. The parking data is derived from annual property surveys of our property management and maintenance staff. So we go to the maintenance teams, we go to the property management teams, and we ask them, is there enough parking? If there isn't enough parking, how many spaces are needed? If there is too much parking, how many spaces could have been reduced? This is a great opportunity for us to do a lessons learned, especially when we're looking at future developments, future planning board conversations. It's really critical. We do it every year. So the table provided in the package was derived from these surveys and was used in our local approvals process for the Gorham project. The ratios in the table still hold true, and we are confident that 0.7 spaces per unit is more than sufficient parking for this development. Meanwhile, the wait.
Nate,
Sorry?
can I just stop you one? I think what you're doing is responding to questions actually the finance committee asked. Not
Yeah.
necessarily this group. So for this group, I just wanted them to appreciate the subject matter that you're covering.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, and so in this group also you guys had similar questions. I believe, Will, last time you asked about market demand in the Scarborough area. I know there were questions about parking last time. So because both questions were similar, I just combined them into one. And so that's where this is coming from. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear, guys.
No, my meetings blend together, so I'm quite sure that the subject matter is pertinent for sure.
No, I was pretty sure they overlapped quite closely.
Okay.
So meanwhile, the waitlist data is derived from our property management databases, and if anything understates the need for affordable housing, as waitlists are managed differently based on our regulatory requirements and open vacancies. The 2 properties on this list with the highest totals, Park Street School and Ridgewood 2, have open waitlists due to the need to fill vacant units. The waitlist data of these properties is more representative of demand at each property. So I think one other question that the Housing Committee in particular, so the Finance Committee was, I believe both committees, so the Housing Alliance and the Finance Committee, both wanted to see the financial models. But in particular at the Housing Alliance, I think one of the key factors you guys wanted me to highlight was the services. So I did include, if you look at my responses to the Finance Committee, we included delineation and explanation of the senior services we provide, either directly or through third parties. So at Avesta, we understand that our senior properties are more than just apartments, they are homes. Indeed, for those downsizing from a single family home to one of our buildings, their units may be their last home. To that end, it's important that our buildings act as both a community and service hub. So with a project like this, what we're looking at in Scarborough is we'd be looking to partner with RTP, Regional Transportation Provider. We'd be looking to partner with a healthcare provider to do potentially blood pressure clinics or foot care clinics, which is especially important for seniors. I can tell you that over the past few months, we have been partnering with local pharmacies to administer COVID vaccines at our apartment buildings. This is just something that we do. We bring the services to the seniors, and in the case where we can't bring those services to the seniors, we provide them with the means to get there. So with that, I will close out just by saying that we view this as an opportunity to create an organic green campus that is separate from Route 1. The design of the building, while also calls not only to the existing public work structures, but we believe represents more of a transitional design. I know there was a question last time about design. We believe that this building serves as a transition piece between the former public buildings. So you have kind of this flat facade, flat rooftop, former fire and police station, and it transitions back to this building that is made to look not quite as large by having an indented first floor. And then we have these angled roofs to kind of nod to the fact that immediately behind this building will be a residential community. So with that, I'm not going to get into any specifics of the budget in this opening, but I'm happy to talk about them. And I think I covered pretty much everything in the RFP, and I think I covered all your questions from last time, but if I didn't, let me know.
Great. Nate, thanks a lot for that intro and for the thorough presentation and submission. We really appreciate that. And thanks for the proposal.
I have a question, and I think it's to Tom.
Yeah. So Marge, let me just
Okay.
want to pull the group and just open it up to questions and see who else has a question. Marge, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Great. And
Um,
I just do want to be, a little not regimented, but, it's a little bit hard over Zoom so we don't talk over each other.
Yes,
So if folks
I
could just,
understand.
uh,
Um,
hands it all.
Have we ever had a project that requested both a TIF and money from our fund?
Yes, Bessie 2 was the one that comes to mind.
That they were both?
Yes.
I was trying to recall because most of them, it's one or the other. But that's fine. That was my question. I just
In
wanted,
fact, I believe a Vesta
Us one as
Southgate
well.
project as well received both a CEA and a grant.
Yes, Southgate did.
Didn't the one on Little Dolphin Drive also?
Yeah.
It feels like this is pretty common.
okay.
Any other questions? Bill?
Yeah, I wanted to hear more about the RTP public transportation services that would be delivered because that has a real appeal to me
Mhm.
with my association with the public library, which is a half a mile away and might be more convenient for seniors to access by if there was some kind of public transportation system.
Yep. So, yeah, no, absolutely. And so, so public transportation. So for the seniors who are more mobile, there is a bus stop about a half mile down the road, and it does appear to be walkable with sidewalks and crosswalks. RTP, we would typically bring them on site 3 days a week. You basically schedule your appointments. You give them the location that you want to go ahead of time, and then they take you there. At least that's my understanding of their program. I have a brochure I could send you if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Others with questions? Kayla, Will, Dick? Eric?
Brian,
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I just want to reiterate from the last meeting that as a employee of Avesta Housing, I am sort of abstaining due to conflict of interest to questions and conversations. Just wanted to make that clear.
All right. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, Will, go ahead.
Sorry. I don't have a question so much as just a thank you. This really was very thorough and answers all the questions I had from last time. So I really do appreciate that, Nate.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that.
Nate, I'm just gonna ask a couple of questions before, and Bill, if you have a couple, you have a question?
No, I was going to say, I support what Will said. I really appreciated the answers.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, Nate, I appreciate you coming to town and even making the proposal, and the interest in Scarborough. As I think about, our group and, whether to support, the initiative, there's a couple things I'm interested in, and one, I just want to be very confirmatory about. Without this tax credit award, is it right that this is not a feasible deal?
Yeah, so there are
Okay.
two tax credit routes that you can go through. You have the 9%, which is what we're shooting for, and you have the 4%.
Okay.
We've asked for two resources from the town, a TIF and this money from the Housing Alliance via the town council. And without both, it needs it both for programmatic success and financial feasibility. It's just that simple. Without both, it's not financially feasible.
And then Nate, as I was looking, thank you for that.
Yep.
As I was looking through and looking at all the scoring and whatnot, and that I'm in this business that you're in, so I understand some of the scoring.
Yep.
It looks to me that you're being strategic and sort of a steward of resource and really asking for what's needed to get the points you need. Is that some of your strategy here? It doesn't look like you're necessarily maxing out points, but is there some thought behind that?
Yeah, so I will say that pretty much maxing out points, it's difficult because you have to look at what's feasible within a particular community. So the only community that I know that actually does TIFs that are worth 4 points is Portland. They do 75 or 30 years. I've never seen that anywhere else. And so it's just knowing what's possible that's the situation you go in. And those 3 points we do need them here. This project, is bumping up the lowest scoring project from last year. We're going for hopefully some revitalization points, with this being in the Downs area, and that's not a point those aren't points that you get all the time. So that's a project advantage on this one. We're being very strategic, and we have thought about it, and we have thought about what's palatable to the community as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming here to help meet a need that we have. So thank you for that. Betsy, do you have a question?
I do have a question. So I think we talked about this last time, but so maybe you gave the answer, but I don't remember, Nate. So when we were working with on the Jocelyn project, they described a point system where they could prioritize folks that lived and worked in Scarborough for the housing. And the highest priority would be a veteran that lives or works in Scarborough for getting that housing. Is that something that you can provide? And then from your wait list, do you have a number from the wait list that are actually from Scarborough?
I will have to follow up with you on the wait list. I know that for sure. As to so what you're talking about is a tenant selection plan criteria. It sounds like as they go down, they have hierarchies. I don't know to what extent we usually do that. I would have to follow up on that one as well. I can say though that our typical strategy is to aggressively market the property in Scarborough and fill it up with Scarborough residents. I mean, that would be priority one, but I will follow up on those items.
I'll go around the room one more time, see if folks have other questions or comments.
Just a point of information the committee might be interested in. It really may not have a bearing on your decision. I hope it doesn't. The matter was considered just an hour or so ago by the Finance Committee. They will not be sending a favorable recommendation to the full council, but it will be heard before the full council, but without a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee. We need to sort out the details as to when and how that comes to council, and it could be as soon as their next meeting. But I just wanted you to be aware that occurred just earlier this afternoon.
And Tom, if I may, that's just CEA, not for what the Housing Alliance might recommend
Beg your
for
pardon.
the funds from the Affordable Housing Fund.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that info, Tom. And that I think that note, and Betsy, your note there is a reminder that in a way we may be talking about two items wrapped in one here. One item is the request for an award from the Housing Trust Fund, and the other is the recommendation, kind of the recommendation letter for the CEA, which is kind of inelegantly wrapped up in this agenda item. So with that, we can move into discussion, or I guess maybe we can have a motion. We have motions and then seconds and then discussions. So if somebody wants to make a motion for something, then we can second it and then we can talk about it.
So it is, Brian, is what you're asking for a motion to make a recommendation to the town council in favor of, I guess, of both the CEA and the award from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? Is that what you're looking for?
We can do them together. We can do them separately, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
if someone wanted to move that the Alliance recommended to the Scarborough Town Council that we award this request and favorably recommend the CEA.
I'd humbly recommend you offer those up as separate motions. I think there are separate and distinct discussions in my mind.
All right.
I agree, Tom. I would make a motion that the Scarborough Housing Alliance approve was it 200,000?
Yes.
The 200,000 requested for this project what are we calling this project?
Nate, what do you call it?
Doesn't have a fancy name yet. Right now, it's just
Well-
US 256 Route 1.
All right.
The old fire station.
Yeah,
Old
old fire
police
station.
station.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I'll make a motion for the 200,000 be approved by the Scarborough Housing Alliance.
Yeah, I'd second that.
All right. All right. Discussion. Anybody have anything they would like to discuss about this?
I think it's a great project.
Yeah.
Fully support it.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry.
Will.
I think that that given our mission, which is to promote affordable housing here in Scarborough, I think this really aligns nicely with it. I agree. I think it's a great use of the space. I think it's a great location for the need that it's serving. Again, the comment made last time is that these things don't come around that frequently. I know it feels like they have because we've seen a lot recently, but I think that passing on this opportunity is a mistake for the town. And I feel very strongly that this is a good partner with Avesta, who's served the town well in the past, and this is a good use of the trust fund that has been built up by the
And
town.
I like the design. I mean, I think it was
Yeah,
well
Mark-
thought out. I'm sorry, Brian.
Sorry, I know it's hard, but
Okay, I'm done.
Michaela, any thoughts or questions?
No, I completely agree with everybody so far.
All right.
I think it's a great project.
I know Eric has thoughts, but he's not going to share them, right? Dick, how about you?
I like the project. I think it's anything's, for senior housing, high and far, even though I'm one of them. Maybe I should just, leave myself from it. But I guess my question is why isn't the financing committee, making the recommendation? That's
Yeah.
what piqued my interest.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm keeping the gun here.
Yeah. I do, Dick, on that note, it's, I would say different organizations of government have different, silos that they work within.
Mhm.
And ours focuses on housing and affordable housing. And theirs may be more fiscally oriented and focusing on other issues.
Mhm.
So as I look at the issue, take it for what you will, but I tend to be a little less, worried or impacted by that lack of endorsement.
Mhm.
Tom, I don't know if you can give some color, if you know of any, if there was some background or if there's anything germane to our conversation, but.
The motion before you relates to the grant request, correct?
Oh, that's right. Yep.
I think this line of questioning or discussion really may relate better to the CEA.
All right.
That's why I said I think I was jumping the gun here.
You jumped the gun, Dick.
But
I'm gonna, Marge, did you have another comment or question about your motion?
No, I'm ready to vote.
I'm gonna propose an amendment, but before I do, I'm gonna ask Betsy if she has any comments or questions within our discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, the Housing Alliance was established to really look in depth at giving these grants. And so, I definitely see where that's what you guys should do. We did not do that on the finance committee because we've been through a financial policy we put in place to evaluate CEAs and not grants from the Housing Alliance, because that's completely separate. And that policy, it falls a little short for this type of proposal. But, we are looking to expand that policy. But I think right now, the way the policy shakes out is that the finance committee weighs in on the CEA and the Housing Alliance is weighing in not from that policy, but from your charge and your establishment on the grants. And know that at least with Jocelyn, that came to the council first, and then you guys had a meeting around there and weighed in on, I believe, Will, if I recall, they were asking for a CEA, and you guys said, well, do you want to have a grant too? And so they're like, yeah, we'd take a grant. So, I think process-wise, maybe we need to, kind of clean this up a little bit. I'm really happy to, as a counselor, to hear recommendations from both groups, you guys and the finance group. But that's why we didn't weigh in on the grant, because that really wasn't our policy, and it's not our charge. So, that's how that happened.
Great. Thanks, Betsy. Marge, I'd like to propose an amendment to your motion.
Go ahead.
All right. I propose that we amend your motion by making the approval subject to Avesta's or the applicant's receipt of an award of funding from Maine Housing within the next 2 years.
I agree.
Is that friendly?
Mhm. Yeah, it does the motion with a 2-year cap.
Yes. All right.
Mhm.
Great. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Oh, is there a discussion?
I just had a question. Mechanically, what is the action we're taking? Is there like a letter? Is the intent, Brian, to write a letter to then submit, or are we just making the?
Yeah. So
Go
this
ahead.
is. So as I understand it, it's town council that approves the release of these awards, and part of their consideration is what we think about these awards. And so we will be recommending to town council that they award $200,000 from this fund, subject to Avesta or the applicant receiving funding within the next 2 years.
Brian,
Right. And is that what form does that take? I think was really my question. Is it
A letter, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that.
Okay.
I think that's what I've done in the past when we've come up with an approval. I've written a letter saying that at this meeting, we approved X number of funds for this project. And that way it went out. It went out with the agenda package to town council. So they got a copy of the letter, and then I spoke when it came up the night that it was on the agenda.
Can I just ask a procedural question, Brian? Was that accepted as a friendly amendment, or was it?
Yes, it was.
Then I think you need to take a vote on the amendment. Oh, it was friendly? Okay.
It was friendly. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So all in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Raise their hands. All right. That's everybody. All opposed? All present or abstaining? All right. Please note. Eric, could you please note that you are abstaining? Great. And everybody else is in favor. Well, thanks, folks. And Nate, congratulations. You have our endorsement on that.
Yes,
So
thank you all.
the second half of that discussion would be for someone to make a motion somewhat related to us making an endorsement of the applicant's request for a CEA. And reminding folks that Avesta has requested a CEA agreement with the town to one, enable the point scoring and financial feasibility of this affordable housing development on that plot of land.
Yeah.
Will.
So I'd like to make that motion that similarly subject to approval of, that we make the recommendation that the town council approve the CEA subject to the, approval of the Maine Housing Alliance or Maine Housing, whatever they are, Maine Housing.
Great.
Second.
With the same 2-year window.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I will second that.
Marge, I think Bill already beat you to the punch.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
Yeah. We've got dueling seconds. Great. So now discussion. Michaela. Will.
I think that it is appropriate for us to make the recommendation, even though a CEA is not necessarily in our charge. It is something that I think coming from this committee, we strongly endorse the project, and that the only way that the project can happen is if there's a credit enhancement agreement. I think that we had a discussion about Jocelyn Place last time, and we talked about other uses of the property, which possibly did get us over our skis in terms of that's probably a better discussion for the finance committee. But I think that that the investment that the town can make into the housing, again, given the limited opportunities for sites to be available that's suitable for affordable housing, as well as a developer who's willing to take on the project and make the investment. I think that, again, it's a rare occurrence. There's a considerable need in the community, and that this really is a good use of the town's resources. And I don't think that as a committee we should shy away from making the endorsement.
Thanks, Will. Bill?
Can you remind me what the CEA percentage and length is?
The request is 75% credit enhancement agreement for 20 years.
Mhm.
And after 20 years, it's fully taxable.
Yes, and that was designed to enable them to grant them 3 points, and that's at the lowest end of the 3-point range, I believe.
Okay.
Great.
Can I think Betsy's on the finance committee. Can her comment raise the perception that maybe the rules that had been adopted by the town council for dealing with credit enhancement agreement applications weren't able to deal with an application like this? Betsy, can you give us a little insight into, was this a unanimous vote of the finance committee?
No, it was 2-1. And so the TIF that's been requested to be used for the CEA. So, one of the things I've learned with the affordable housing, a lot of times folks like Nate talk about the TIF because they have to have a TIF in order to get a CEA, and all these projects, or a lot of these projects, ask for CEAs, not all of them. And so we have an existing TIF, and they are requesting to go underneath that TIF, but that TIF is a economic development TIF. It's not an affordable housing TIF. There's 2 kinds of TIFs in Maine, but we are well within our rights and our purview to use the economic development TIF if we want to. We do have one problem in that the boundary of the economic development TIF, the downtown TIF, is not situated for where this property would go. So there's actually more than one thing that the council would have to change in order to approve this TIF, or they would have to approve the CEA, or they would have to go and create an affordable housing TIF so that they could request a CEA. So there's some complexities around the fact that at least where the border is drawn right now, Councilor Clucci kind of went through that with a fine-tooth comb and discovered that they weren't quite in that. And so the vote was not unanimous. It was 2-1. And to talk about getting over the skis, I think there were definitely economic considerations in terms of what the town voted for when we approved the public safety building bill. That vote was very close. We had 1.5 million specified in that referendum that we would be getting for this property to help pay for the public safety building. And comments that I made were, I really feel like, the folks of Scarborough were counting on turning that, when they voted yes for the public safety building with that amount in it, They were not counting on necessarily, tax dollars going back into this property. They had, we found out in the finance committee that Avesta will be purchasing this property, or at least this is what they said. This could have changed for 500,000 from the developer. So that means that we got 1.5, or we cleared 1.5 for that property, and Avesta will pay 500 for that, and then they will get a tax break somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 1 million. And Nate, you weren't able to be on the other call, but there was a question between the spreadsheet that developed the tax, the total amount over 20 years versus what you had in your prospectus. Councilor Anderson noticed that those two things were different, and what you had in your prospectus was almost double, what we'd seen on the spreadsheet. So, so there was just some questions around the total value, and how we initially came to even sell that property in the first place. I didn't take notes of what everybody said, but I think some of the things that you guys are going to be doing will be hugely helpful down the road, because I think there's a thought about, getting this inventory, this idea of this inventory that you're talking about, and really keeping a running total of what we're doing and how this is all fitting in. It also ties to, we've got things going on with the GMO and things like that. So that's sort of a very wordy, not so great explanation, Bill, but I hope that helps. There's a lot of different factors in there. And I don't know if Nate could address the difference between the prospectus and the spreadsheet for what the total value of the CEA is.
Yeah.
Tom's number is correct. So I talked to Rebecca after I got in. Tom's number is correct. The higher number used in my budget is simply a hedge against a higher assessed value. It's what we do all the time. When you're underwriting and when you're developing models, you're always hedging against a worst case scenario. So Tom's number is correct. He's using the format that is used for evaluating town TIFs, and his number should be used for the purposes of that discussion.
Right, but I believe Councilor Clucci did make that point, was that you would hedge because we don't know what property values will be. I mean, we see them skyrocketing right now. So, so they're, so it's a range somewhere between 500,000 and, as a good estimate, and up to $1 million of what you hedged, but probably not that high. So that's,
that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. So, great. Thank you, Nate. And thank you, Betsy. So I'll just comment that I do think it's important for this group to support the CEA. It's interesting, Betsy, you bring up the notion of process, and which makes me think about order. I think as we get our process aligned and kind of worked out, if there's a fellow that I work with that uses this phrase, he says, if it was me, God, and a yellow pad of paper, here's how I would have it. So if it was me, God, and a yellow pad of paper, it would be great if the Alliance were able to kind of have first crack at opportunities like this, and kind of give their policy thumbs up that from a housing perspective, this is a good idea or a bad idea. And then the other steps in the process could at least know that from the social policy perspective, this kind of has the blessing of the folks who are looking out from a housing perspective. It's a bit unfortunate, I think, that we're all kind of merging into the highway together, and it's a bit convoluted right now.
I totally agree with you, Brian. I totally agree with you. I think there is a place for that, and we just need to get it established. And so I think it's a little messy this time, but I'm glad you guys are taking it up. I'm glad you're doing it. And our process is not set in stone. It's a policy. It's not an ordinance. So we knew that it was going to need tweaking, and it really needs more development. So I'm all in favor of that. I guess I would just say, I would kind of like to understand if there's any hard, just as a counselor, if there's any little more hard data that you guys could say, why you're approving something. We find
well, yeah, and so that's what I want to get to with the remainder of my comment, which is in my support for this, and what I hope that we will vote to support it. I'm moved by the demonstration of the need for housing, the demonstrated need. I'm moved by the fact that there are few places to deliver this type of housing in this kind of quantity. I'm moved by the fact that you're asking just for what's needed for the points, that you're not maxing out, what you could get. And there have been past proposals from others where that stewardship has been, that really resonates with me, that you're not coming here, asking for the world and then hoping to get 50% of that. You're asking for what you need. And I can appreciate that. And then, the other thing that I'm moved by is that, absent this, big subsidy, which comes from Maine Housing, this thing's not happening. So absent that pile of dirt will be generating $0 in tax revenue. So, I'm moved by those things. And one of the things that I don't know if it turns into a procedural suggestion or something that works its way into a motion, but I'd love it if whatever comes out of this committee is, a little bit of a thick note or a thick letter, maybe kind of a beefy letter that really does lay out some of our collective thinking about, why it is, if we do support this as a group, why it is that we support this, and, what some of those collective bullet points are. Because I think, it'll be helpful for Betsy and others on the finance committee and folks on town council to know, we're not just throwing paper airplanes and approving things that come in front of us, but we're actually putting some thought into things, and we've got reasons for our endorsements. Any other thoughts, Will?
Yeah, I tried my little electronic hand. I wasn't sure if you were going to notice him.
I don't
but-
see.
I noticed that. I liked it.
Yeah. Not effective. So I think to quantify it, I really come down to the demand and the suitability of the location. The demand, I think, is really telling, and I think the stat that Nate's provided to us is really around their wait list at their other projects, and we've also heard from Bessie Commons in terms of the need, and it's not. It doesn't seem like huge numbers when you just look at them in terms of the, when you say 426 and you look at that total, it doesn't sound like a big number. But if you think about what it is that they're waiting for and the conditions that they're waiting in, it's really compelling that, that's 426 people that have decided that they want to stay on those wait lists, and the years for which they have to wait for the current residents to be able to move out or additional housing stock to be created, and they're living in either housing that's too small for their family size or that they can't afford, and which means they're sacrificing other elements of their lifestyle, which given the target range is not an extravagant lifestyle by any stretch. It's the condition with which they live. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for our neighbors in town that and in our neighboring towns. I appreciate that we want to serve Scarborough residents with Scarborough tax dollars, but our boundaries in southern Maine are not rigid. There are no fences along our border with South Portland or Saco. So I think that this really helps a market that has a tremendous amount of need, and that with an investment, to Brian's point, that otherwise has the potential to go unfilled, because the tax rate on the pile of dirt is not significant. And while there could be higher and better uses that generate more revenue for the town, there could also be other uses that come along when this property is purchased that don't that don't fit as well, or generate traffic in a challenging section, or are noisy and disruptive and to the neighbors behind them. But I think that this project is a really well suited one that will fit well and serve the town well. For well beyond the 20 years for which the TIF is granted, or the CEA is granted.
Bill?
Thanks, Brian. The CEA proposed is really pretty favorable because it's quite evident that what they have done with this proposal is max out the site. I mean, you could put a Nematos in there and it would generate 25% of what this would for tax revenue and be a perfect match. And that's absolutely the case. So what you have from a tax consequence point of view is a complete wash. We're not likely to get another big building in there that's going to generate substantially more tax revenue. And changing the boundary of a TIF, that's a mechanical step that the town council is quite able to do. And it's a technicality that it fell probably a few feet outside the boundary, just because of the way the boundary was drawn when we drew that TIF a few years ago. And the type of TIF CEA it is, economic development, again, that is not an obstacle that can't be overcome. All of these issues are pale in comparison to the value of creating affordable housing for people in the perfect location. It's walking distance to everything. So I would very strongly encourage the town council to appreciate how strongly we, members of the Housing Alliance, feel about supporting the Avesta application.
Thanks, Bill. Eric, I hate to do this, but I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask if you might have written down what the motion is so that we can vote on it.
I believe, Brian, the motion aligned with the first one, that the Alliance recommends to the town council to support the CEA, which is 75% for 20 years, within a 2-year funding window.
Great. All right, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Yes.
All right, all those opposed? All those abstaining? All right. Eric Boucher. Did you get all that, Eric? Great. Yeah, and so I'll ask the group, what I would tend to do is write a recommendation letter that kind of reflects the nature of our discussion, and we can vote to authorize me to do that, or I could just do it however you guys want to go about that. Marge, what would you have done in the past?
I was going to say, it's in the minutes, you have approval, so I would just write the recommendation letter, submit it to Tody to make sure it's in the board package for the next agenda.
Great.
One safeguard, Brian, would be for you to write it and circulate it for review and comment.
All right, yeah.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thank you, folks. Nate, thanks for working through that with us, and really thanks again for your proposal and interest in Scarborough.
All right. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Nate.
Have a good
All right.
night.
You
Thanks
too.
so much, Nate.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. On to bullet point number 3. And if folks are comfortable with it, I'm gonna, and unless we all really get into this meeting and want to stay longer, I'm going to try to cut this off by 7:30 and keep it at a 90-minute meeting, which seems to be pretty fair
Standing.
duration for one of these things.
Can we
Again.
do the standing item of the
Standing
fund balance?
If anybody is prepared to give the number, sure, but
It's usually Tom.
Yeah,
Tom,
the
if you
number's
have-
about $528,000.
And with anything outstanding?
No, that includes Piper Shores, the one that
Okay.
has been outstanding.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Tom, did you say 528?
528. There's some interest that I can't account for, but that's a reasonable estimate at this point.
plus or minus. Great. So the third bullet point is a new idea I want to kick off as a discussion and see how folks feel about this. But it strikes me that the world of affordable housing has a lot of words to it, a lot of concepts, and Betsy, you could not have given us a better segue at the beginning of this meeting when you asked, what do you mean? What definition of affordable housing are you using? Right. And with that, it gets me thinking, and like questions like that get me thinking, what would it be like if the Alliance, like on the web somewhere, like the town website, had a spot with resources related to affordable housing, where, maybe there's articles about affordable housing, maybe there's, places where counselors, when they have questions about, what does it mean to be affordable, they knew that they could go to, I don't know, www.skyboroughhousingalliance.com or whatever. And that could be the trusted resource for, all things affordable housing. And not that we are going to be generating, original research, but, to be able to have this kind of dumping ground for, vetted ideas and, the state of the art. It strikes me that there's an opportunity now with housing being so prominent in our discussions to really step things up a little bit. Marge.
It has been noted to me several times that our minutes are not up to date on the town website. And I haven't checked recently, so I don't know in the last couple of months if they've gotten updated or not.
I have not.
But can you still hear me? Because I'm getting buzzing on my.
Yes,
Yep.
hear you fine.
Okay, good. So one thing I would suggest that's going to be quick and easier than starting over is if you went to us on the website, if you went to our committee, that it would explain what's the definition of affordable housing, where we get that number, the 80% or whatever. And it would explain it, it would have the definition, and our minutes would be current so that if somebody wanted to know what we were doing, they could look there. And also if we get this inventory current, that we could also post the inventory there.
Yeah.
And I think those would be big steps towards making it easier for people to find information.
Yeah. Well, and I'll Betsy, I'll call on you in just a quick second. I'll make mention, I'm involved with the some of the work going on with the Downs right now. And with that, there's this information collective that's going on with, articles that we're sharing with each other and with the public that all relate to downtown development. And it strikes me that something similar could be done with this. Betsy?
Yeah, I know, just as a resident, one thing that would help me is, you read the definitions. It's a pretty complicated world, actually, how it all works. And, the ordinance refers to the Portland median income and all that. I wonder if the Housing Alliance, say once a year or whenever that's updated, let's say that gets updated in June. I don't know, I'm making that up, but in July, actually put out the actual numbers. The Portland median income is X, and the 80% of that is X. And, so because I'm kind of a more concrete numbers person, instead of people having to go off and find that and make their own calculation, and just keep that up to date yearly. So every year you could go, oh, this report came out. This is what it means.
Yeah. That could be, and as we think, one of the things we'll be talking about soon is, kind of tweaking our sales process, right? With the homes in the downs. And, imagine if, folks could just go to this place online to get the info they need, whatever that is, including those numbers that Betsy was just talking about. Would people on this alliance be interested in, having, a subcommittee or something that's, curating that kind of thing and coordinating with the town to get that up there? Will?
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I like how you would structure that, Brian. I mean, I feel like often a lot of this stuff falls on an individual to volunteer to do something, and then, like, for whatever reason, life gets busy and it doesn't get done. But if it's a subcommittee like that, presumably there is some joint accountability and some kind of meeting on a that outside of our monthly meeting that might prompt them to actually make sure that stuff gets taken care of. So I think that'd be a good way to handle it. I like the idea. I mean, looking at the new town website, it looks like the website's pretty flexible to give a committee, space on their page or sub pages to be able to fill in information. So I think that'd be great.
Yeah, we have a basic template, but we can customize that to meet your needs. Certainly, we'll do what you need to. Where we struggle and where you could help is really identifying the content that you want to share. We can provide the structure and the framework to do so.
Does anybody want to be on this subcommittee? First person on gets to name it.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
I'll jump on. What the heck?
Great.
I don't want to be the first one to name it, okay?
Bill was talking, but he's muted.
Yeah, I know. No, he's laughing.
Bill, we can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Well, Will's got IT experience, so.
Yeah, if you need me to code up the website, I'm all over.
Perfect.
But I like the idea of this. I really do. I think that the more we can spread the message of Scarborough promotes affordable housing, the more distinguished the community becomes. And I know the 7 odd of us, whatever it is, we all passionately support it. So the more we can advertise, the better off.
Great.
Yeah, and Brian, I'd be happy to volunteer for that as well.
Wonderful. Great. Anybody else?
I'm not IT. I have my
All right.
husband is IT.
You don't need to be IT.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
not a prerequisite.
I will tell you the things that I am passionate about getting out there is I've talked to town, this is months ago before they were in the middle of doing stuff with the website, is our minutes should be current. And I think that if we had the definition using the most current information that we have and we can report, it was as of whatever date. If we put that out there, plus if we can get the inventory up, those 3 things, the current minutes, the inventory, and the definition with numbers would be a huge step forward. I mean, that's what I feel is like priority. And we can do other things later, but I think those should happen sooner.
Great. So we'll have a 2-person committee for now, and
No, 3. Marge, Dick,
Oh, yeah, I can be on it. I'm just not
Okay.
IT.
all right, great. 3-person
Marge,
committee.
Dick, and Will.
Great.
Yeah.
Eric?
Brian, I'm noting that Tom has his electronic hand up. I'm not sure if that's on purpose or by
Oh.
accident.
It is.
Oh, Tom, we're going old school on this meeting. We're analog for this meeting. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the issue of minutes is just a missing link. Eric, if you could send me the approved minutes. I mean, you do such a studious and vigilant job. So it's just a matter of getting those in our hands and we'll get them up. So it's just a little missing link.
I believe it's several years, so I'll have to go back. And
Yeah, I at one point I sent a whole lot of them to Tody, and this is probably 2 years ago.
Yep.
All right.
It's several years behind.
Yeah, if we can just get into a monthly routine,
Yeah.
Eric, after the meeting, just send them to me and I'll make sure they get up.
And do you want historical ones that I can find or
Yes.
that I can send?
Yes.
I have all of them for the last 4 or 5 years.
Great.
I think agendas too. Their agendas missing for.
Will and Dick and Marge, you guys have a very active and productive committee. Congratulations. This is terrific. This is terrific. Betsy?
So you can just say you don't want to answer this if you don't want to, but one of the topics we've been talking about in rules and policies is if there was an opportunity to continue to record this meeting and post it, so one thing people could do is go back and watch the meeting if they were interested in. Is that something this group would be interested in or not interested in?
For committee work or for the Alliance?
Meetings.
The Alliance meetings. Because of COVID, we've been recording. and
Oh,
posting,
yeah.
But COVID is coming to an end.
What?
Technology can be,
What?
well,
What do you
you
mean,
know,
Betsy?
well, it could be, COVID itself is not, but some of the processes
Oh,
around,
all right.
we had special dispensation to do recording, but we've been talking about how could we continue that for a lot of the particular groups that we haven't always recorded, because it seems the public, even though you guys don't always know it, they go back and they're watching. I mean, they are very interested in a lot of topics. So just kind of trying to get a feel from some of the groups in terms of outreach. It's the only reason I bring it up now. If you had the opportunity to have these continue to be recorded and archived, would you want that?
Marge?
I think it's a good idea, Betsy. Although sometimes we get a little crazy, but I think it's a good idea. But because we never did it before COVID. I mean, this was like a whole new thing for us to be recorded, and we always had it open to the public, but it was rare that we ever had a public person come and sit in our meeting. It was always by invite for a specific process or project. So I think having it more available to people will just help us spread the word.
Absolutely.
Will?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Is this being recorded now? The little record indicator isn't on. Oh, Tom, you're muted.
We are broadcasting live on YouTube and YouTube archives them. So they're
Got
all
it.
available
Cool.
through YouTube.
So occasionally,
Excellent, yeah.
we might see just recording on Zoom if we had a problem with the stream, but then we'll still go and post those. But if it says streaming, it's recorded. I mean, what the town has done, I mean, the tech staff, all the stuff they came up with so fast was amazing. It's not going to be that easy when we start going live in person again, but we're talking about it. So it's good to get your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment was when we get back in the town manager's conference room, the AV setup is going to be not as good, I would assume. But maybe if there's a way to.
Yeah, there's definitely challenges. So I'm not saying we can do it. We're just trying to get the feedback now.
Yeah,
Because
cool.
the public, and I should say you guys are the public, we're all the public, but it's been people really like it. Like you said, Marge, they might listen in or even go back and watch it compared to coming out, getting in their car, driving down. So I want to say just a little tiny silver lining of COVID is the response from the public has been very favorable to these Zoom meetings.
Yeah, but Betsy, the the one thing I would say, and being very, I don't know, vulnerable with this answer, I suppose, is that with workshop type groups like this, where there's lots of discussion and where we're not necessarily a decision making body, silly things that you say live on forever when they get recorded, and I think in a discussion type group, the probability of silly things increases, more so than in a decision-making body. And so, there might be some distinction to be considered between, recording, say, a town council or a school board meeting versus, recording, a group like this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That balance between transparency, openness, and, like you say, the working group, it's how do you strike that balance?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you worry a little bit about self-censorship when folks are being recorded and not having as thorough of a conversation. Eric?
Thank you, Brian. I don't have an opinion on recording at this very moment, but I would like to suggest that we maintain the availability of this Zoom, of this virtual, because I think about times when Marge and Dick are sunning themselves in Florida. It would be great to still have them attend.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's feasible, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we're waiting, the state, there's state laws. You guys are not a council, so, or like you said, Brian, there's a distinction. So these groups may still be able to do that, even if, say, council and BOE can't. But, we hear there's legislation in Augusta because it's been popular. Like we're lucky, we all live around town, and maybe we're out of town occasionally. But you talk about northern Maine, where the superintendent's driving an hour and a half between schools, and island towns. They've been begging for this for years.
Yeah.
Because it's such a challenge, outside of our little metropolitan area where we're really lucky. So, yeah, hopefully the legislature will listen. But they had asked for this for years. Some really remote Maine communities.
Yeah, Eric, to your point, when if Betsy's right and this thing is almost over, I get to travel for work again. Okay,
I didn't mean it that way. I meant I was afraid the legislature was starting to crack down again. That's all.
I don't know. I heard a promise.
It's here forever. That's all.
Let me check the tape on it, Betsy.
Yeah.
Let me check the tape on it.
I don't know. I don't even get my first shot until Friday.
Yeah.
But I usually have to miss.
I don't want recorded. Yeah.
I have to usually miss these meetings when I'm, on the road or in a hotel or something, and it would be great to be able to, not miss these if I'm traveling for work. So, to be able to continue to meet like this really is huge. So, great. So there's bullet point 3 with a small, I don't know, tangent, but that's terrific. So bullet point 4, I'll try to squeeze in within 5 minutes, or within 4 minutes, so we can then go to public comment and then adjournment. And maybe this turns into a parking lot issue. And then next time we can talk about big projects for 2021. And then we'll go around the room once. But I was having a conversation about housing policy, of all things, and tax policy, and lamenting that we really the question of, do we have a stated tax policy in our town for doling out things like CEAs and things like that, and do we prefer senior housing or do we prefer family housing, and what do we really want in town, and what does Scarborough need, and as I was having the conversation, it slowly started drifting into a this or that conversation. Do we want this or do we want that? And I stopped it and remembered some work that I did in Michigan in the early 2000s, where we were developing affordable housing. And one of the key components of the housing we developed, almost universally included what they call a pilot agreement, or a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, which was enabled by state legislation. And it was critical to getting all of the deals done that we did. But what was kind of unique about it, and why I'm calling this the Michigan model, was that different types of housing got different treatment under the Michigan model of pilot legislation. So family housing was eligible for a certain type of pilot agreement where you would have to pay a certain percentage of your rents for taxes. And elderly housing was eligible for another percentage. And as I was having this conversation, what it kind of brought to mind was an opportunity as as we as an alliance are thinking about policy articulation and policy recommendations, kind of thinking about a baseline. What do we want for housing in town, and what does it take to get funding from Maine Housing or any kind of affordable housing? But then, if there's a certain flavor, if you will, of housing that is more important to us, whether that means elderly housing versus family housing, or family housing versus elderly housing, or supportive service housing versus independent housing, being able to dial up or down from that baseline the support that we give. And so I want to share that story and share that model with folks, because I think as the months crawl on, we'll probably have some opportunities to be talking about housing policy and starting to articulate some ideas to just put some boundaries around how we actually do things in town. And so there's kind of one of my war stories from the past that maybe will have some relevance. The end. That questions, comments, and if none, we can go to public comments.
There are no attendees, Brian.
Oh my goodness, killing me, Tom. Really?
There were, but you wore them out.
Darn it. All right. So before we go to the final bullet point, so I'm going to skip over the big projects for 2021. Just check in with everybody. Marge, any final thoughts from you before we?
Nope,
wrap
I'm
it
good.
up? All right. Michaela? Eric? Betsy? Will?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I just had a quick question. Was there a call to action on the Michigan model? I apologize. I was distracted there for a minute.
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to come? You're going to bring it up next time?
There's no call to action, but if you have some thoughts, happy to hear them.
Will, I think they adopted it. You missed it.
Yeah. All in favor except for one person who was like spacing. No, it was just kind of a placeholder, but yeah. Any thoughts though?
Okay. So unfortunately, I missed a fair amount of your articulation there, and I apologize. But in terms of trying to quantify and describe the relative merits of the different types of housing, I think we brought it up with Nate last time in terms, because we had seen so many of the senior projects come to fruition. And we haven't done a family affordable housing since Southgate. And I think that's the only one in town that I'm aware of that this committee anyway has been involved in. So yeah, I think there'd be, I guess I'd like to learn more.
Great.
But that's a comment, not a question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where we are in the agenda.
We're at the end, Will. We're at the end. Great. Dick?
Oh, I'm fine.
All right.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Not yet. Wait, we gotta give Bill a chat. We're just gonna check in with one last person. Bill, final thoughts from you?
Bill, you're muted.
I definitely like the idea that we're going to be more active in trying to communicate to the community what we're up to. And while I'm kind of out straight with some other stuff, to the extent that the committee that has been identified needs any help, don't hesitate to call, because I really believe
the more we let people know, the more support we'll receive for our mission,
Great.
which we all believe in. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Bill. Tom, final thoughts from you? Anything?
Done.
Great. Marge, I'll entertain your motion.
I would like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Great. All in
Second,
favor? Great. Second by Bill. All in favor?
good to see
Aye.
good to see
Good to see
everybody.
everybody.